Hello, yes, that's right. It's Joe here for JOYRIDERTV, back live finally with some more Q&A coming to you from the Wild Wind workshop where miracles take place every day. I have actually got a live studio audience today. We've got David in the workshop, just making sure, coming technical advisor and moral support at this time. Thanks to everybody who's been waiting already tuned in. Hello, Toot. Great to have you on board in Texas there. And we've got Patrick in Illinois. Nice to have you with us, Patrick. Got Mark and Janet in Ohio. Toot says blowing 20 in the hill country of Texas. Nice. We've probably got high 20s here in Vassiliki at the moment, and it has been champagne plus in the bay this afternoon. We've got Anthony tuning in Hong Kong. Thanks for coming, Anthony. Nice to have you with us. All right, and Toot has taken one of the suggestions on board. We've been talking quite a lot about this stuff, self-adhesive grip to put on your boat, and Toot has got hold of some for his 17, and I get the feeling that he loves it. It's a good choice. It is, I'd say it's one of the best upgrades you can give your boat, which is not particularly intrusive or requires any real skills other than being able to be patient, take your time, clean it first. Very nice. There we go. All right. So, Patrick, I'm going to come back to your question in a minute. We've got Chris on board in Texas. Chris, I would imagine, is revving up for the Prindle North American Championships, which, of course, are starting at the start of June. So it's not too late if you haven't yet entered and you're a Prindle sailor to get to Texas for the start of June. Sign up, and we want to have at least 50 boats taking part in that event because, yes, it is the 50th anniversary of the Prindle catamaran. It's a big year for Prindle. They haven't had a big event for a long time now, I think about 20 years. So if you're in the USA, you've got a Prindle, or if you just love cat sailing and you can get to southern Texas for the start of June, then make it happen. Oh, yes. There's lots of sponsors. There's raffles, prizes, barbecues, good times, and great sailing to be had there. All right, there we go. I think that was pretty good, actually. I really went for it on that. All right, we've got Jack on board in Quebec, Canada. Nice that you could join us. All right, Carl is there. He says, has been blowing 20 for 2 months. That's a long time for it to have been blowing 20. Oh, so Carl's there in Texas as well. Nice. We've got Cebu. That's Thomas. Hi, Thomas. Nice to have you with us. I dare say it's not long until you're going to be here. Chris says, in regards to the Prindle event, there are 19 boats signed up. Registration is also going to be allowed on site. But if you are thinking of going, then get entered early so that then the guys organising the event can have an idea about who's coming. If you haven't got a Prindle, then perhaps get in touch with Chris or go onto the Facebook page for the Prindle Nationals and just put on there that you are a cat sailor looking for a boat to sail in the Prindle event. And I'm sure we can put some teams together and get more boats out on the water. All right, we've got Mike on board. Good to see you too, man. All right, Toots. Anyway, Mike is from Fort Worth in Texas. A lot of Texas on board today. We've got Stefan in Manitoba, Canada. All right, and we've got Paul here who says, when is the right time to start my wind dance to promote the best champagne conditions in Vassiliki Bay from the 2nd to the 12th of June? I would say, Paul, that the way that it's been going in May so far, it is a done deal. When you come out in that period, we will be having some champagne conditions and great wind. All right, so I'm just going to go into this first question that has come from Patrick, who says, Hobie writing bag, best option, or are there any alternatives that you feel work better? So what Patrick is talking about is if you capsize your boat and you're too light to pull your boat up, maybe it's light winds or you're not sailing with a crew and you want to be able to get your boat back upright and you don't want some sort of righting pole on your boat, then this is what I'm using. This is actually some sort of diving paraphernalia because it's an aqualung. I don't know how it came into my possession, but now I've got it. I'm not going to let it go because it's really handy. This one is a 50 kilo special, so it takes 50 litres of water. And I would say any bag that will take that amount of water and has got some robust attachment points will do the job as a writing bag. I think the Hobie writing bag is obviously going to be really good because it is designed for that purpose. But for that reason, I would wager that it is reassuringly expensive. Whereas you could find a bag like this, get someone to make you a bag. It doesn't matter if it leaks a little bit. But what is the first bags that I was using were just these garden rubbish bags, for those green ones with really strong handles. And yes, the water does leak out a bit, but not so much as to make it ineffective. And those you can pick up for like $15 or euros or pounds or whatever your currency you're using. So I would say that that is a good alternative to try because it's cheap. As long as it folds up into a small space so you can put it in your pocket, then happy days. There we go. All right. More people signing in. We've got Aaron in New Zealand. Thanks for staying up, Aaron. It must be the middle of the night there. Got Morgan on board. So more great events. In fact, let's put out some sort of announcement of all of the events that you guys want everybody to know about. If you send me an email, let me know your event, and then I'll put a whole program together of all of the events that you want people to know about. But Morgan's talking about the Tornado Regatta, which is going on in Kansas, USA, last weekend of July. Do you sail a Tornado? Get to that event if you can. Chris says it's been howling on the Texas coast. All right, let's see. What else? Oh, Mike says this is aimed at Chris. Where in Texas is the Prindle meeting? If you can just put that in the chat there, Chris, that would be great. So I've got because I missed last week, I've got quite a few preloaded questions. So I'm just going to steam into the first one, which is from, all right, this one's from Aziz in Egypt, who we've actually seen twice in Show Us Your Cat. The first time with the Dart 16, more recently with the Top Cat, and he's just fitted a spinnaker to the Top Cat. And Aziz would just like to know about spinnaker traveler settings when using the spinnaker on the boat. So if we're getting stuck in here. Sorry about the lack of straight lines here. It's been a long day. Spinnaker is deployed. So this is the back beam. So I would say if you're sailing with a spinnaker, there are two main traveler settings. If it's light winds, now for me, I keep the traveler in the middle all of the time when sailing with the spinnaker up, unless the wind is really light. Now, here we go. If the wind is really light, here's the mast. I will be sat like here, right in next to the mast, which means it's a mechanical thing rather than a airflow thing. The reason here, which means if your traveler is central, the traveler car actually interferes with the tiller extension, making it near impossible to steer. So if it's really light winds and I'm sat in by the mast, I'll let the traveler out just a little bit, just enough so that the traveler car is then out of the way of the tiller extension, so you've still got effective steering. One of the most important things when sailing with the spinnaker up is that you are able to steer the boat, because it's the steering of the boat which controls your power. So very important. If so that is in really light winds. I still wouldn't let the traveler out very far. What I would do, however, is sail with quite a slack main sheet. And one way that we can define the tension in the main sheet is if where can we go? Over here. Okay. If this is our back beam, we can define the tension of the main sheet by, this is for very quick reference, is by looking at the angle that it sits at. So if the main sheet is going properly up like this, vertical, let's call it, then that would suggest that your main sheet is tight. Then if your main sheet's got a little bit of angle like this, then we could call that eased, which would be like, well, we'll come on to that. And then if your main sheet's got a lot of angle, like 45 degrees, then I would say that is what we could call having the main sheet loose. So what I would do in the light winds with the spinnaker up is with the traveler in a position so that you can steer still quite close to the center line, I'd sail with the main sheet loose. And then as you pick up speed, start to increase the tension in the main sheet. So even in quite light winds, like 5 knots of wind, you might end up with the traveler almost central, main sheet in the eased position. So not bar tight, just out a little bit. And then that would be a good position to have that in. Then as the wind increases, our actual position where we're going to be steering the boat from, we're going to be moving onto the hull. Like this, perhaps not like that, but which means it's then a lot more practical with our angle of our tiller extension. So we can then move the traveler back to the center line. Because once we've started sailing fast with the spinnaker, we really want to have the mainsail pinned in the middle of the boat, because if it is out at all, it's going to be creating drag, slowing us down. So as the wind increases and we're moving out here, like if there's enough wind to be lifting the hull, certainly traveler in the middle, main sheet for the gusts, tight. If the wind eases, then eased. Does this all sound pretty good? Yeah, and then as the wind increases, we're going to be sat back here. And then if we're sailing a 2-person boat, then the crew would be out on the trapeze, either there or all the way to the back if it's really windy. And then you'd be sailing with the main traveler central, main sheet tight, unless you sail into a big area of lighter wind, and then you could just ease it slightly. Now, I think this is an excellent explanation on this. So thanks very much for the question provoking this excellent explanation. Otherwise, it wouldn't have come out. So thanks, Aziz. I hope that helps. Okay, back to who's in the live. Yeah, so the Prindle Nationals are on the Bolivar Peninsula in Texas. We've got Rodrigo on board, who I believe is in Brazil. What do you think about A-class, not foil? So I think the A-class sailors are very cool. If it's not a foiling A-class, they call it a low rider. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I think I'd be I've never sailed an A-class, whether it's a foiling boat or a low rider, and I would love to have a go on either, because I think for single-handed sailing, doesn't have to be particularly windy. The boat has got such a power to weight ratio that it really gets going, especially on the upwind leg in not much wind. I think if you've got like 6 to 8 knots of wind, you could be trapezing upwind, flying the hull. And it's a long boat as well. So very, very quick upwind, even the low rider. So I'd say yes and yes. If someone wants to bring one here and let me have a go, I'll make a video, maybe even 2. I think it seems reasonable. We've got Ollie Smith listening in live from Wildwind, probably doing something with sails right now. We've got an absolute bun fight of boats coming out of the water right now. All right, Mark and Janet. I had replaced my Hobie 16 halyard rope with something a bit larger diameter for better grip, but now if I let go of the metal halyard line, it runs up the mast. All right, I've just got to think about this. Yeah, I suppose it would. If your halyard's really heavy, suggestions, the first one that springs to mind is don't let go of the wire part of the halyard. Yeah, there aren't many other suggestions. To be honest, even with a traditional main halyard on a 16, like a bit of 5mm, there's still a chance that if you let go of the wire part of the halyard, it could go up the mast. The only cure for this might be using a slightly heavier shackle. So if you're using a 4mm shackle, maybe go up to a 6mm, and that might just be enough. Now, what I learned in South Africa recently is the guys who are racing the 16s very competitively down there are using quite a chunky halyard for actually hoisting the sail, like maybe a 6mm, maybe even bigger. And then when they've got the mainsail at the top, they're actually taking the halyard off the rope, off the wire, and just putting a bit of elastic to hold the wire into the mast, and then not actually taking the main halyard out sailing with them, thus reducing the amount of luggage on board and reducing the weight on the boat. You know, granted, not by much, but it all helps. So there we go. That's something that I learned. All right, we've got Luke. Another hello from New Zealand. This is great. It must be past your bedtime by now, but thanks for coming. We've got Russell there. Nice to have you on board, as always. Toot says, can you single-handed sail with the spinnaker? Yes, you can. Just check out any of the FX1 videos that I've made. It is possible, but the actual sailing part is feasible. It's doable. It's not too bad. It is the hoisting the spinnaker and more so the dropping of the spinnaker, which is the real test. Yes, you can, but dropping it is a bit more of a test. That's what I would say. If you want, Dave, you can come around here if you want to get a look. Then you can see these perfect illustrations through the. Yeah, so if you hadn't known, I've got Dave in the studio audience today. He's out on holiday with us at Wildwind Sailing Holidays. What Dave looks like. All right. You too could be in the live studio audience. If you happen to be here right now, then feel free to pop in, say hello. All right. All right, we got Scott there in where's Scott? Be honest. No, I'm not even going to guess. All right, dropping it into the slot. Great to have you on board. Black Sheep's there in Florida. All right, and we're going to come on to our next preloaded question. So let's have a look. Just going to delete that so I don't do it twice. All right, so we've got this one from M1A2 Abrams, who says, how often should you tighten parts of the boat? So firstly, how often should you tighten your hounds? Pardon. So the hounds is what we call the attachment part on the mast where the rigging goes. So generally you'd have your rigging going to one point where there'd be a shackle. And yes, it is a good idea to check this shackle is tight on quite a regular basis. So I would say if you're in the situation where you are dropping your mast every time to go sailing, then just check it every time before you put the mast up, because it's too convenient not to. But if you're like us and maybe you leave your boat in a sailing club and your mast is up all of the time, I would say every 5 or so times that you take the boat out, maybe it's worth just tipping the boat over or dropping the mast, checking the hounds, putting it back up. But yeah, probably 5's a bit, it does seem a bit generous every 5, but if your boat is just sat there in a boat park for an extended period of time, then it might be moving a bit, you know, especially if it's a 16, something like that, where the mast can move. Every time it moves, that could be loosening it slightly. And then I'm a big fan with the hounds of tightening it using an adjustable spanner rather than a shackle key or a pair of pliers. You get a bit more purchase with an adjustable spanner. You can really crank it up. And there you go, happy days here again. So that is the hounds. Next, the bolts that bolt the beams onto the boat. I would say again, once every 5 times. That seems pretty reasonable, I think. When did you last tighten yours, Dave?
About 5 times ago.
5. Well, there we go. Dave is already a 5 times man for tightening his bolts. So yeah, I'd go 5 times. But again, if your boat is just sat there, there might be, I don't know. No, I won't even. I won't continue a lot. Trampoline. Okay, tightening the trampoline. Now that is more of a visual thing because you can see it. And what generally happens is after you've sailed the boat maybe half a dozen times, you might start to see that the trampoline is no longer bar tight like a pool table or something. So this would be a visual one. If you can see that your trampoline moves up and down at all, that is time to tighten your trampoline for sure. And the last one, the rudder bolts. Now the bolts, here we go. We've still got some rudder stocks in the workshop. The bolts, like the ones that go through the rudder blade on the lower and upper casting, I would say check those every time you go out. So, or every day you go to use your boat. So if you turn up at your sailing club, before you put the sails up, just have a little feel of your rudder system. If there's a bit of play in there, just give your bolts a little tweak. And then as you work, it takes seconds, but well worth doing. And it will make your boat feel that much better. So there we go. And Mark has just, on this point of tightening stuff, he's just said, always check that your mast tang, now the mast tang is the fitting on the mast where the shackle goes for the rigging. So that is associated with the hounds. Always check your mast tang for cracks. Good idea. He says his mast came down last year due to fatigue at bends in the tang. So there we go. All right, we've got Graham just tuning in Spain. Good to have you with us, Graham. Glad you could make it. Matt's there in Lake Lanier, Georgia. Nice to have you on board, Matt. All right, so we're just going to keep charging through because I've got a lot of preloaded questions. So I think charging through is the right thing to do at this time. Okay, next one is from Mike. Mike from Dallas, Texas, by the way. He says, we have talked about this before, the topic of tethering yourself to your boat. So like you might have on a yacht or a keel boat, some sort of safety line that means if you do fall overboard, you're going to be attached to the boat. So firstly, does that make, I hope that makes sense. That was, yeah, that was all right. Sometimes I have to think if what I've said actually makes any sense at all. Yeah, so firstly, I would say the only the only time that I would consider doing it would be if I was sailing single-handed. That would be the first thing. If I'm sailing with a crew, I will make sure that the crew knows how to stop the boat. So the most basic stopping the boat instructions for the crew, if you as the helm fall overboard, is grab the stick and push it away, shove the boat up into the wind and just totally release the sails. That is the only instructions that the crew needs. And if you're going out for a longer sail, perhaps give the crew the opportunity to try so they know what to expect, rather than trying to get them to sail back to you if they're not so experienced. Just how to stop the boat, grab the stick, shove it up into the wind, let the sails off. That should be enough. If they capsize, that can actually be a positive thing because that means you're more likely to be able to just swim back to the boat immediately. So if I'm sailing with a crew, I wouldn't generally think that the tether or safety line is necessary. If you were going to be sailing single-handed in an area where you're having to perform quite a few maneuvers, like then again, I wouldn't go for the tether in that situation because it is another line which is going to be, you're going to be likely to be getting tangled up with it and it's going to be a bit of a pain. Now, I do see that a lot of people sail the boat without having a hand on the main sheet all of the time. If you're going sailing, whether it's with a crew or without a crew, you should always have a hand on the main sheet. You may have seen last year on JOYRIDERTV, I made a series of videos about falling off the boat. And I did experiments with what was going to happen if you were holding the main sheet and if you weren't holding the main sheet in a variety of different wind conditions. So holding the main sheet always gets a more favorable result because you'll stay attached to the boat. If it's windy, the boat will just capsize. So always be holding the main sheet, and that greatly reduces your need to put on a tether sort of line. Now, one of my main reasons that I don't like the idea of this tether line is if you did capsize and you're attached to it, that is one more thing that you could get tangled up with and potentially stuck. So this is the consideration that we have to make. Now, if I was going to go and sail across the Adriatic Sea to Italy, then single-handed, then yes, I think I would consider having a line that keeps me attached to the boat. Just because, like, if perhaps the trapeze wire snapped and dumped you in the water, then if you're in totally open sea, then I think maybe I would. But for everyday sailing, if you're not going like miles offshore, then I would say I'm not keen. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be keen. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying what my opinion is on that, which is not the law. It's just, so if you're not tethered to your boat and you fall off, it's not my fault.
Quite
Am I cleared there? I've got Dave here as a witness. So there we go. It's a tricky one. All right. Next question. This is the sort of thing that I like. We've got Stephen, who's just bought a Tiger. Great choice. The Hobie Tiger is still a great ride, and it's the original #1 Formula 18, and they are still just as good as they were when they came out in 95. The only problem now with the Tiger is other F18s have come along and they are a bit quicker around the race course. Tiger is a great boat. But Stephen says, which GoPro to go for? If you were to buy one GoPro, then what would it be? I would say the 8, the 9 and the 10 all do a fairly similar job. They've got excellent stabilization. They get really good footage. The bonus with the 10, I'm not sure about the 9, I can't remember, but the benefit is with the 10 is it's got a forward facing screen, which means if you're doing what I do and do a lot of filming of yourself, you can actually see that you are in the right position for your camera when you're filming. But if you're not filming yourself so much, I would say there's no need to get a 10. You could get an 8, which is the 8 is the camera that I use the most often, and the footage is really, really top notch. Now, the other option, of course, is the Max, which is the 360 camera. And that just is a completely different game completely, because you can go out sailing. You don't need to worry about which way the camera's pointing. You can choose what you want to look at afterwards. But what this does lead to is there is a bit of editing time afterwards to turn your 360 footage into like an actual video that you can watch. It on my computer, which is a little bit old and slow, it probably takes for each 4 gig, it cuts up the clips into 4 gigabytes. Each 4 gigabyte clip, which would be something like 8 minutes of footage, takes about half an hour for the computer to process it once I've decided where I want it to look. But the 360 you can also use as a standard GoPro as well, but they are downside, they are a bit bulkier. They're about twice the height of a normal GoPro. But if you want to get those amazing shots, I'd say the 360 Max is a great choice. Yeah, so there you go. That's what I reckon. All right, let's see what else. All right, Russell says, Joe, have you seen the Warrell 1000 this year? They have 2 days left until the finish. Yes, I have been following it on Facebook, and so should you, everybody else. It is really exciting. I think there's something like 15, maybe 20 teams who are sailing up the coast of the USA, and there have been more thrills and spills than you can shake a stick at. Just check it out today on Facebook, the Warrell 1000. There is a Cirrus 901, which I think is one of the most exciting looking boats to come out in the past 5 years, coming in to the beach. And I'm not even going to tell you what happens because you need to watch that. It is wicked. That's quite old fashioned, isn't it, to say wicked? But anyway. All right, so we got BJVDB. great to have you on board, who says, hi, Chris. Don't know if you're talking to me, but anyway, the sale of our Nacra 6.0 is starting to delaminate in some places. Ooh. Unfortunately, we didn't catch it in time. The sale is now missing quite a few patches. Do you possibly have a fix? Yeah, I think once the sale starts to delaminate like that, if you replace the panels which have delaminated, which are, and most sail makers would be quite happy to do, but once it's started going, that really is the beginning of the end for your sail, unfortunately, because if one bit's gone, it stands to reason that the next panel is going to go, and then the next panel. So if you've got a budget for it, there are a lot of sail makers who would be able to make you a really nice replica mainsail for your Nacra. I did actually put a video together about 2 years ago on which are the most popular sail makers used by the JOYRIDERTV community, especially if you're in the USA, which I'm guessing that, it seems really hard to find new sail here in Europe. Yeah, so in Europe, I would say one of the best priced and reliable sails is Forward Sailing, who I believe are located in France, who are making replica sails for different types of boats at really, really good prices. The other thing I'd look at in Europe is, I can't remember what they're called. It's something like BNB. Do you ever see them in Holland? No, it's in Holland. There's two big catamaran places in Holland. One's Hobie Cat Holland in Noordwijk. Worth checking out their website, get in touch with them, see if they might have one. But the other one, I think it's called BNB Water Sports, which is also in that neck of the woods. And they always have a really big stock of used gear. So well worth having a look. Check out Facebook Marketplace as well. Yeah, a lot of options there. Yeah, that's so. Chris says that Cirrus 901 is a monster. Looks like a pair of water skis. I think that's a better description than mine. I thought it looked like a pair of canoes, but water skis is a bit more accurate. But if anybody from Cirrus is watching and they want to have their Cirrus 901 on JOYRIDERTV, just get one down here and we could spend a week putting it through its paces, making a lot of videos. And there are people who don't know what it is. So apparently JOYRIDERTV, people are watching. So get one down here. Oh, there we go. Alexandros says BNR Water Sports is the name of that place in Holland, who've always seemed to be coming up trumps with second-hand gear for your boat. All right. At this stage in the game, I'm just going to take a short commercial break. You can get these bottles from JOYRIDERTV.com, by the way. It means you're no longer taking a plastic bottle, throwing it away afterwards. This is made of metal. Keeps your drink cold for longer as well. There we go. Thanks, Toot, for the elevator music. All right. Moving on. Next preloaded question. There's a lot going on today. Yeah, it's not this really wordy one just yet. All right. We got Jordan, who I am guessing is a younger sailor. Don't know where. He's just bought a Hobie Dragoon. The Dragoon, incidentally, is a 13-foot-long catamaran designed as a youth boat. Really good. We've got two here on the beach. Jordan says it didn't come with a boom or a spinnaker. Do you know where to buy the spinnaker to that boat, or how to make one for not too much money? Okay, so the first one with the boom, you only really need to have a boom on a Dragoon if you're using a spinnaker. And even then, I'm not sure. I haven't really looked into the Dragoon class lately and whether the guys who are racing the Dragoons are using booms if they're using the spinnaker. One of the unique selling points when the Dragoon first came along was you could sail it with or without the boom. So I think a lot of people just went, well, we'll leave the boom at home. Good choice. But as far as getting hold of a spinnaker without it costing you too much money, if you're in Europe, then I think we're going back to BNR Water Sports or Hobie Cat Holland or Forward Sailing if you want to get a new one made, which is a replica. Otherwise, if you're in the USA, there's a whole bag of sailmakers there who they should, in theory, be able to get the dimensions of the sail from some sort of website, I think they call them, where you can find out the dimensions of sails. But if that information isn't available, so let's look at what we do if we had to absolutely go from scratch getting a spinnaker made. This might seem, as soon as I start doing this, it might seem rather obvious, but okay, so here's our boat. That looks about right. And oh dear, looks more like a knife. But anyway, there's the mast. And one thing that would be good to do, I could probably measure this for you actually, is what should be the length of your spinnaker pole, your bowsprit. So get the bowsprit on there. And then I think the Dragoon masts would all be fitted for where the block goes as standard. But again, if